asked you that, he said, just tell him it's the same place the music comes from. I mean, you know, the same thing is like, where do you put the sword? I've got a little jacket on. Down my pants. You know? Bill Panzer's version of that was like, it's there when you need it. Bill? Announcement. How long we got? Yes, I'll tell you in a second.
We've discussed Roger Daltrey already, but there were other huge names from the music industry that were on the show. Pat Benatar,
Roland Gift.
lead singer.
Roland Gift.
The lead singer.
You're talking about Felicia, who played Felicia, Joan Jett.
Joan Jett. Oh, sorry.
Not Joan Rivers.
Yeah, lead singer. On campus, and there were other big names from other genres on the show. Were they fans of the show and wanted to be on the show, or did the producers go to them?
Well, usually the producers would go to them, but I found this every time, didn't matter whether it was a celebrity or whether it was an actor. I guarantee you they always wanted to do their own sword fights. Every single one of them. And every single one of them, it varied what their experience was, so it made things tricky. I'll get back to that, you know, having injuries like that. So it made it difficult sometimes because the level of expertise, it's not something you use every day, but it's something that I think is in your own DNA, because we use swords for hundreds of, not thousands of years, up until about 100 years ago. So somewhere deep in here, we still remember what it is to use those. And I think we all think we can still do it when we go up there. That's why I was like, oh, no, please don't. But it did cause a couple of issues. I mean, we had things like broken swords that would smash in the middle. Me and Roddy Piper. Roddy was funny. Roddy was, you know, Roddy's so very Piper. And he had this freaking great, huge sword. And Bob Anderson, I remember him saying to me, you got to parry that like this. And I saw him come across with the blade, go bam. Bob, I really don't feel like comfortable with that because I just feel weak in that position. I would rather. He said, no, it's fine, it's fine. And when he did that, as we got into it, because what happens is you get adrenaline. When you do a fight, it doesn't matter how much choreography you've got to really have it in your head. And I got much better at it. But up in the early days, suddenly you forget things, and there could be the slightest change, and somehow we got it, and I ended up, my entire finger was split open. And that was every week. You can. I'm not joking. I was every week. This finger was stitched. One side stitches here, stitches here, stitches here. This was a gun. This was a sword. This was another sword. So each week it was very. When that happened, literally 2 minutes before, the blades we were using were not real. They were aluminum. But still, aluminum still cuts you. You know, you take a aluminum, you bang it over the back of your head, it's still going to get split open. And at one point, we even had it on the dailies, and he came across like that, bang, and a sword went snap. And that would happen quite often with the katana, because the katana, when you have a katana blade, the blade, this is the hilt of the katana, the actual blade, I mean, sometimes went this far. So what ends up happening, if you've got the force of going here, it would snap off here, and that happened time and time again until they decided to put the actual shaft of the blade all the way down into the handle, which made it a lot safer. So there were so many instances I could tell you of the accidents that we had. I mean, God, I don't know how long I've got to do that, but you know, I'm lucky. I was lucky to have a lot. The weird thing is, it always happened when you didn't expect it. On the big stunts, you know. One of the worst accidents I had on Highlander was with Dennis Berry. Now, some of you have seen the shows, you might not know who Dennis Berry is. Dennis Berry, I'll give you a little of this first before I tell you the story. Dennis Berry was this big kind of American-French director, and he used to have a lot of fire with him. He was always going, yeah. And he'd do that. In the very first season, we were working with a French crew. The French crew was a union crew, and they really kind of like would work because they could. you know, it wasn't they were getting paid, you know, a wage, it was because the union was making them. So they didn't really care. And we got to the Champs-Élysées one day. It was actually at the Place de Dragoncon, which is this huge obelisk that they stole from Egypt. It's true, they did. And the lights go, we've done this scene, he's done this entire thing, this entire Steadicam shot, us doing this scene, and then it goes here. Okay, now we're going to cut, and we're going to do the close-ups. Well, in that period of time, the camera's broken. And he turns round and and we got crowds, I'm not joking, there's probably like 200-300 people watching us do the scene. And suddenly Dennis is screaming, "You bitch, you're fucking..." And it's going on. And I went, Dennis, come here. I said, dude, you know, can you just like, chill out a little bit, just go. He said, it's okay, Adrian, this is what they understand. Like, what? Yeah. And he would go, so Dennis was always a very vibrant. Every time we used to have a scene, even with Stan Kirsch, he went up one day, would stand at the scene that at the beginning, you know the opening credits, is me and Stan doing this thing. Well, that day, Dennis Berry was on the set, he got there early, and he basically stood there, and he's trying to choreograph the scene, and suddenly he goes off. And he sees a guy eating a banana on the top of the hill and bans him from the set. I'm like, dude, you're nuts. So the one time I got injured was on a Dennis Berry shoot, and what happened was there was a bunch of stairs coming down to a landing, and a few more stairs. Here was a banister, and the idea was I was going to go over the banister and land on the ground. Now actually it was about this high, and the banister was about this high. And the idea was a stop, he had a close-up here, and then he was going to pick up the jump over from a wider camera. I was going to Monte Carlo that night to do the film festival, and it was the last shot of the day, second to last shot of the day, and I'm stepping there, and I said to Dennis, should I do the jump? Because you're going to cover it, you know, when we come back on a wider shot. He said, yeah, just do the jump, just do it. So, do the close-up, I go over to do the jump, and as I go over the railing, either my foot or the jeans were too tight, and I flipped, and I landed like that, on my head. And I'm like, oh, and it was like, they put a very small pad there, and they took me to the hospital, and they put me in an MRI, and they did this whole thing. They put me in a neck brace. And for those of you that know anything about necks, you're supposed to keep it still. And I went to Monte Carlo, and I've got out and I'm in a tux, and then we're in Monte, you know, this doesn't look too big. So I just threw it off, and I ended up in the club that night going, yeah. Yeah, well, I ended up for a year every morning in pain. Every morning, so the chiropractor put it back in. So that wasn't the only time I landed on my head, but that was a different show. So there are a lot of instances like that. Anyway. Just like give you a couple of them.
Hi. Highlander was one of the first shows that I watched that was sci-fi, and now I'm a fan of many shows like Torchwood.
How dare you!
Well, introduction. I was wondering if there was any shows, past, present, that you would like to be on that you're a fan of.
Game of Thrones. Walking Dead and Game of Thrones are two shows I really like. I like the characterization. As I said, Highlander was a similar show in that it was the characterizations about between the people. It wasn't about what's going on. That just happens to be eye candy. I think that's what's interesting to me about those two shows. Walking Dead. What's that? That's true, yeah, just walking going. You know, it's always surprising to me that the zombies have tables these days.
How are you tonight?
I'm good.
That's good, that's good. Who was your favorite villain of the week? Was there anybody in particular, whereas if you went back and looked at the tape, you could say, wow, he made me look excellent?
I mean, all of them did, man. I was like, is that a good shot? No, you know, Callus, the guy that played Callus was a very bad villain, as well as Tim Horton. I played Horton. It was really interesting because Horton was a very nice man in reality, and that happens a lot of the time. Actors don't play who they are in film. They're allowed to do something different, be somebody different on film. And Horton was such a nice guy. He'd be like, oh, but on film, he's this nasty type of villain, you know. And so I think those would be two that I thought were very interesting, as well as Roland Gift's character, who I thought was, you know, he just played this kind of fine young cannibal, didn't he? Those were, I mean, there's a couple of others that came in for single episodes, but I can't think of them off the top of my head.
I had another question, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
What's the word I'm using? What was the retribution for Richie Ryan dying on the show? Because when I was in college, we would have Highlander parties all the time, and when he died, the next season, I couldn't find anybody to watch the show with me. And you know, nowadays, when something happens, internet will light up, Twitter will light up. I mean, when Ben Affleck was cast as Batman, everybody that could say something did. And you can do petitions or whatever. Did you get any kind of retribution, or did anybody boo you when you walked into a room? What was that like?
It was funny because there was a fan club that was Richie's Still Alive, I think it was. Seriously, there were people that denied that ever happened. Like the same thing as there was no Highlander 2. Exactly the same thing. We didn't have as much internet back then. I wish we did, because I think the show would have been a much bigger show than it was. I mean, it is worldwide. I mean, I can go to many countries around the world. It ran in 80 countries around the world, and it did very well on that. But with the internet and the way that it's structured now and what you can do with the internet, oh my God, you know, the things we would get back and what we could actually create with the show is much greater. But the retribution, that would be the biggest one. I mean, there were fan conventions where I'd have people go, "Did you say that about Richie?" I said, "You know he's dead." "No, he's not."
Okay, this might be a silly question, but what's your favorite, like, non-sword weapon that got used? I believe Richard Mall might have had an axe at some point. I don't know.
That I used or somebody else used?
Either one.
Well, what I thought was kind of fun, and I actually wanted to show something in this point, was I created a cutter with a knife. And the cutter came from an open hand cutter. And, you know, what they say is you can actually, anything that you use with your hand, you can actually do with a weapon. So I created this whole cutter with an actual knife that I could actually use it. So I kind of had fun with doing that. The producers loved it because I could do another piece of merchandise. But, those of you that have been inundated with catalogs and stuff know exactly what I'm talking about. So that was a fun one to do. I can't think if we actually used a whip. We used a whip at one point, I think, in the show. And Anthony DeLongis was actually he taught Michelle Pfeiffer and Catwoman how to use a whip, and he taught me at one point I had to use a whip at one point. But that was the only other two I can think of that we used. My favourite blades were two blades that I actually used in the source. I actually like two weapons because I actually think it's a lot more, because I was using Balintawak as well, Carly, two sticks. So I like the symmetry of two weapons.
Getting kind of off the past and more for the future. I don't know, I haven't heard that much about the reboot that's coming up for the new Highlander, but would you be interested in playing any roles as maybe the new Connor or a figure in the reboot?
The reboot has been in reboot mode for about 4 years. It did have a script written for it, but it was basically remaking the very first Highlander movie, and I wasn't around till then, at that point, or my character wasn't. So I'd love to do it and, you know, play a role in one of the movies. It would be fun to do, but I don't think I would be part of that unless they came up with an interesting storyline where I kind of popped in and, you know, did a cameo for him, but I think they're really trying to remake that first Highlander movie to a younger audience so that they can revamp the franchise.
Yeah, I can actually remember watching the very first Highlander movie in the movie theaters years and years ago. And the first part of it kind of drug, and then, you know, the last half of the movie was really excellent. And, you know, it had a really great concept. I really liked you know, in the film series. You know, I always wondered, you know, if it would actually, I know you were talking about the reboot, but that was really kind of my question. Is there a real big interest in getting this thing where it's like a consistent story? Because, you know, the first 3 or 4 films, you know, is so fragmented. And, you know, they just kind of did the series. The series was actually very good, that they actually did something that was consistent.
Well, that, I think, is the problem with the films, you know, in the sense that, to me, I saw the first film, and I loved the first film because of what you just said, because it had something underlying. What I got from it, the scene I always tell people is the scene when he's running along the beach and he can feel the stag. He can feel the entity or the essence of somebody. And I thought, great, at the end of the movie, I got the fact that he was there to carry the sins of the world almost. Because he got what everybody was suffering with. And I thought that was a great idea. But then they went into, let's make it about you know, special effects and big bangs and all this stuff. And to me, that's not what Highlander was. And they almost did that at the beginning of the series when, I mean, episode 6, we shot, the beginning of season 2, we were shooting 6-day weeks, which is the same as a 7-day week, but I'd have at one point 13 action sequences to do in 6 days, which included hanging off of a car, 3 sword fights, and I said, whoa, stop. You've got to understand what product you've got here, and I don't think that the movies have been able to reproduce what the essence of that first movie was. So if anything happens with the beginning of the reboot of the franchise, I do agree with you. I hope that they have consistency in what they do with that franchise.
Well, I know they tried to forget about 2, they did 3, like it didn't even exist, but I mean, the only thing about 1 and 2 was Sean Connery's in it. He was actually
Sean fixed whole children. Actually, I have a good friend of mine, his son is a friend of of mine, he's a director. And my friend said to me, he goes, you know, when you talk to him about Sean, don't curse him. Because I do it all the time. He hates it.
As I recall from the series, you really expanded the idea of the Highlander, of the Immortals, throughout the series. When you started out, did you know, or did the writers know that we're going to take it in this direction and there are going to be so many more Immortals and we're going to do this, that, and the other, and all the stuff that don't fight and so forth?
No, I think what happened was it evolved. You know, I was supposed to be Connor McLeod when we first started. And I hated that idea. Because I'd already done on War of the Worlds, I'd already taken over from another character, and people really look at you and compare you to the other character. I didn't really want that to happen with this, and luckily, Christophe Lambert actually became available to shoot in the first episode, so I became Duncan MacLeod after them trying to figure out what name we were going to use. And I talked about that before with like Ian or Dougal or something like that. But they evolved it as they went along, and what was good about that was the fact that they weren't quite sure now who Duncan was. They kind of got an idea, and as we went along, that evolved, and then when we got David Abramowitz on, he evolved it further into the storyline, and then they started really, you know, reaching out to those storylines where they said, well, there's going to be these types of Immortals, and there's going to be this relationship between these characters. They brought in Amanda, they brought in, you know, so all those types of things. So it kind of went along as we went along.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You guys hungry yet?
I've been told this is the last question, so I hate to end it on something this stupid. How often do random maniacs on the street challenge you to sword fights? Military sword on hand.
Of course. I go for a shit. Yeah, so when you need it, exactly. I've actually gone through security at airports and they go, hey, McLeod, hey, where's your sword? I'm like, dude, no.
Real quick follow-up, then I'm done.
But no, hold on. There was one time in a club in Vancouver when this guy was really aggressive. And I was talking to another, there's an actor, an Asian actor, who'd done a few martial arts films. I was talking, and this guy just literally slipped in and goes, hey, yeah, I know you are, yeah, you're good, huh? Yeah, I can beat you. Okay, well, I'm sure you can. And he went, yeah. If I turn around and say, what the hell do you think? Well, obviously something different, but you know, if I'd done that, it would have been an immediate fight, and I had to diffuse that. 20 minutes later, this actor had taken him away because he was talking to me, took him away, and then he came back to me and says, "Well, I'm leaving now." I said, "Well, very nice to meet you." Yeah, and he goes, "I'll still take you, you know." Dude, don't you have anything better to do? The problem is that if I fought him and I beat him, then I get lost. If I fought him and I lost, I'd be in the papers not being able to handle myself. I don't win.
All right, very last thing. Duncan MacLeod versus Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride.
Keep my fun if we did that. You know, Manson choreographed that film. And Carrie Always, I know as well, fabulous, I loved it. I don't know, you know, I mean, I think it would have been MacLeod in his fun days with his goatee and little stuff, because it would have been really fun. I don't know, dude, like... Anyway, thank you very much.